Hello, I'm Robert Yule, and this is the fifth in my series on Genesis 1:26 about being a good steward of God's world. Today, I'm going to be sharing about the importance of selling your ideas. It's not enough to just be smart and be well educated and have lots of experience. You need to be able to communicate with people and explain to them why we should do what you're recommending. And so selling an idea can be very challenging because you're trying to persuade someone to do something they haven't thought of before. But before we do that, I'd like to talk one more time about what we covered last week. And that is the challenge, especially when those people are brilliant. And so I have some examples of what I call a brilliant idiot. We talked about that last week. We can all become one of these. We're really good at whatever we do. They say it takes about 10,000 hours to become an expert. Problem is, we're not always in our area of expertise, and we forget that, and we speak with the authority that we have in our area of expertise, and we really don't have that authority. We don't have the knowledge to make these claims or make those decisions well. So I'm going to give you a couple examples, just kind of fun here. So the first one is that I was in a series of meetings. We were implementing a new financial accounting system in my company. And my boss thought it might be a good idea if I participated with the finance team working on the module with program management because I was his senior program manager. So I sat down and I attended a series of meetings with the finance team working on how to do the accounting for programs. These are big projects that we did. In the last meeting we had before launch, we were finalizing the rules. One of the finance managers was adamant that we should not use credit cards to do project accounting because you don't have the detail. All you get is a credit card bill. You don't know what it was. And he was hard set on that. And I explained to them, we buy a lot of little things, and you just are asking the program managers that for screws and bolts and fasteners, all the little things that we have to buy to put one of these pieces of equipment together, we have to cut separate POs for there. That's a tremendous amount of work. This is why we use credit cards. And frankly, I have to review the credit card bill too, but that's very straightforward to do. It's just one document. I don't have a bunch of paperwork I have to fill out. Well, I lost that argument. He was, nope, this is the way it's going to be. But fortunately for me, he was not senior manager. The senior manager who had been listening to this conversation said, you know, there's only one program manager on our team. Maybe we should listen to him. And so we ended up using credit cards on projects. What was the problem? He was a brilliant finance guy, and everything he said was correct. It was also making it very difficult to properly manage projects. And that was actually the objective of the accounting system. Don't let the tail wag the dog. I was at a conference for the second one. I was very new in sustainability. I was there to learn, and there was a panel discussion. And in there, they had experts on the sustainability movement. And this was great. You could ask questions. You wrote them on a card and turned them in. So my question was, given that the electricity in China has 3 times the carbon footprint as California does, the carbon intensity, where do you recommend we manufacture? The reason I asked this was that I just had to do the reporting for my company. And so I was aware of that fact. One of the men on the panel got very excited and he grabbed the card and said, I want to answer that one. And he was a senior member of the California Air Quality Control Board. He was an expert. He had spent his whole life driving manufacturing out of the state of California because it pollutes, and he didn't want to have polluting activities in the state. He was very focused on that. And instead of answering the question, at least the detail of the question, he answered the question in a way that was very helpful to me. He talked about how committed China was to cleaning up their energy program, how their government policies are way better than the ones in the United States and in California, and that we should be doing everything we can to support this green initiative and not um, consider the sort of thing that I was considering. The reason this was helpful to me is that I needed to be able to understand the people that I was working with and how decisions were made and what the criterion were and what were the narratives that people have, good or bad. So again, he was a little bit out of his area of expertise. He was really good at energy. He didn't know much about manufacturing, I guess, about why we probably didn't want to make those parts in China if we could avoid it. And the last one was, I was actually in a review meeting with a bunch of, again, brilliant people. These are lawyers and people who are involved in setting policy at the state level and at the Public Utility Commission level. These are all lawyers, and lawyers are brilliant. And they can be some of the best brilliant idiots you ever want to go into because they're so smart, they don't realize what they don't know. And so I was in a meeting and they were discussing about who should pay the most for rates. We don't want to be the residential customers. Where can we move it? Well, we could have the industrial guys do it. They have lots of money. Let them pay more for their power. Well, that makes sense if you're talking commercial customers. Many commercial customers, they have no choice. They can't leave the state. If you want to sell food in California, your supermarket chain isn't going anywhere. But we're manufacturing. We could leave. And so that's what I said. And there was this pause in the room. And all the lawyers sort of looked at each other. And then they kind of looked at the guy who made this recommendation. They said, we hadn't considered that. Maybe we shouldn't dump everything on the industrial client. Because, yeah, they could just leave and not pay anything. So those were three examples of brilliant idiots. And may you never become one. So today we're going to talk about selling an idea. And as I was working in this thing, I was working a lot in California, and I was getting ready to deal with these people, and I was listening hard to what was important to them. I came to this odd conclusion. All California jobs are green jobs. And the reason is the energy is so much cleaner in the state of California compared to other places in the world. There are some, but there are few that have lower carbon footprint than the state of California. And I mean by footprint, I mean the intensity of carbon in their electricity. How many tons of CO2 are you releasing per megawatt of electricity being generated? Well, I was going to meet with the head of the Public Utility Commission, and I wanted to be persuasive on him and how he sets policy, because he's a very powerful man in the state. So I went to his webpage and I took a look at it, and he was all about his legacy of having cleaned up the state's energy. Interesting. So I modified my opening sentence to, "You've cleaned up the energy. Let's put it to work." He loved it. He loved it. We talked about it for a while. And some of what I shared with him at that time was that China's carbon intensity was 3 times that of the state of California. And so we should encourage manufacturing and research to be done in the state of California, not in China. And he controls regulatory policy. And so he should be having that be one of his considerations. And again, it's just the numbers. I was curious. I did this back in 2015, so I went and looked up, what is it today? Today, the carbon intensity in China is 6 times that of the state of California. And the reason is that they are still pretty much just burning coal, whereas California, on the other hand, has made great strides in reducing the carbon intensity in the state. A lot of solar, really pushing hard geothermal, some wind, but and then again shutting down the coal-fired plants in the state. There was a few of those left, and using natural gas, which is also much cleaner than burning coal or oil. So that was the beginning of me learning how to sell an idea. May you also find ways to sell your ideas. I look forward to speaking with you next week. Oh, just one more little data point for you. You may have been wondering, what is the background on the slides I've been sharing? What am I showing there? Let me show it to you. This is a picture of Beijing on a clear day. This is what China is doing to their environment to build us solar panels, electrical batteries for our electrical vehicles. high-powered magnets to make the high-tech world work. They burn a lot of coal, and this is what their air looks like. There's a saying in the environmental community: think globally and act locally. Think about what China is doing the next time you see someone putting solar on their roof. And it might give you pause about, are we really doing the right thing if this is what the price is? Again, hope to see you next week.